Welcome to Seeds of Thought. Today I want to talk about the real reason you keep stopping right before your life changes. Let me start with something uncomfortable. If your life hasn't changed in a long time, it's not because you lack discipline. It's not because you missed an opportunity. It's not because you don't want it badly enough. It's because you keep pulling the emergency brake at the exact moment momentum begins. And most people never realize they're doing it. They think they're being cautious. They think they're being realistic. They think they're waiting for the right time. But what they're actually doing is exiting the moment right before identity has to change. Stay with me, because if you recognize this pattern, you're closer to a breakthrough than you think. So here's the first thing that most people never notice. You don't fail, you exit. And here's the pattern. You start something, a habit, a goal, a plan, a new version of yourself. At first, it feels exciting, clean, hopeful. Then something subtle happens. You don't crash, you don't self-destruct, you don't spiral. You just fade out. You stop showing up with the same intensity. You loosen your standards. You skip one day, then another. And eventually you tell yourself a story that sounds logical enough to accept. I'll come back to this later. Now isn't the season. I need to get more prepared. But here's the truth most people never face. You didn't stop because it wasn't working. You stopped because it was starting to work. And that's the real problem. So let me show you why this keeps happening and why it feels invisible. Your brain does not resist failure. It resists irreversibility. The moment progress starts to feel real, something inside you asks a dangerous question. If this continues, who do I become? And suddenly, expectations rise, identity shifts. Old excuses stop working. Old relationships feel strained. Old comfort zones begin to collapse. So, your system does what it was trained to do. It doesn't attack the goal, it attacks consistency. Quietly, politely, reasonably. That's why this problem is so hard to spot. There's no drama, just delay, just softness, just disengagement. You don't fail loudly. You exit silently. And this is when you have to have a sense of urgency, because this doesn't reset on its own. And here's why this matters. Every time you exit early, your nervous system learns something. It learns this is where we stop. Not consciously, biologically. So next time, the resistance shows up sooner, heavier, more convincing. That's why years pass without dramatic collapse, but also without real expansion. You're not stuck. You're paused in a loop. And loops don't break with motivation. They break with structure. Which brings us to the solution. The solution is what I call the lock-in phase. This is the part people miss. Most advice tells you to push through. Pushing triggers the very system that causes you to exit. What you actually need is something counterintuitive. You must remove the option to renegotiate once momentum begins. Not forever, just long enough to cross the identity threshold. Step 1. Identify your exit signal. Everyone has one. It's the moment when things start to feel serious, visible, demanding, real. For some people, it's day 7. For others, it's when someone notices their progress. For others, it's the moment they feel pride and panic right after. That moment is not danger, it's transition. Write this down mentally. The urge to quit is proof you've reached the edge of your old identity. Step 2. Pre-commit before the feeling arrives. Do not wait to see how you feel. Decide in advance. For the next 30 days, I do not evaluate, I execute. No emotional voting, no daily renegotiation, no checking motivation levels. Why? Because identity doesn't change through intensity. It changes through unbroken repetition. Step 3. Shrink the action, not the standard. Here's the mistake most people make. They lower the goal. Don't do that. Lower the action size, not the identity you're building. If the goal is, I am someone who shows up daily, then showing up for 5 minutes still counts. Quitting does not. This keeps momentum alive without triggering overwhelm. Step 4. Install a non-negotiable floor. Not a ceiling, a floor. A minimum action so small it feels almost insulting, but impossible to avoid. Why this works? Because the brain fears inconsistency more than effort. Once the floor is maintained, momentum rebuilds naturally. So, here's what no one tells you. If you don't exit, if you don't renegotiate, if you stay just a little longer than usual, something flips. The fear quiets, the resistance fades, the identity stabilizes. You stop asking, "Can I do this?" and start acting like someone who already does. That's the real transformation. Not confidence, not clarity, self-trust. So when you stop abandoning yourself, the real reward shows up. At the end of this process, you don't just reach a goal. You recover something far more important. The belief that when you start, you finish. That when it gets uncomfortable, you don't disappear. That you don't need a dramatic reset to recommit. Life stops feeling fragile. Decisions stop feeling heavy. Momentum becomes normal. Not because you changed everything, but because you stopped exiting early. So here's the final word. This is your moment to stay. And if this message feels personal, that's not an accident. It means you're standing right at the edge again. The old you wants certainty. The future you needs consistency. This time, don't disappear. Don't soften. Don't postpone. Because the life you want doesn't require more intensity. It requires one uninterrupted stretch of follow-through. And if you can do that once, you'll never look at yourself the same again.